Welcome back to Crit and Crit. I'm Axiom.
I'm Sent.
And we are continuing once again with Final Fantasy V and either getting close to or wrapping up at last our discussion of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince.
Huzzah.
This one's been going for a while. Not our longest series. I think Discworld was a little bit longer, but
that was more fun.
That is true. So, this is going to be a slightly different episode. We're going to be less talking about the books themselves today, and more about the community around them. This is the episode about fandom.
My people.
So, we mentioned this in a prior series. I think it was one of the Harry Potter books, but I forget which one. It was back when we were talking about shipping.
I want to say that would be either Azkaban or Goblet, because that's when Harry Cho versus Harry Ginny started to really be a thing. Oh, and also Harry Hermione started to be a thing.
So, Harry Potter was the first real fandom that you were a part of and actively involved in the discussion and discourse around such, right?
Oh yeah, I was 10 when the series started, and Harry Potter fandom stuff was some of the first message boards I was ever on. Sneaking on and learning how to create internet history at the age of 13 or 14, so my parents didn't know that I was trying to learn more about the books and stuff, because I was embarrassed. But yeah, I never really got into the whole fanfic aspect of it, partly because I was an edgelord teenager who was like, oh, just write your own stuff, and I've matured and kind of come around on that as an adult. But, children are stupid, so I was one.
I mean, everybody goes through phases like that.
Yeah, but I really, really went hard on that and just made fun of fanfic, all the time, even though, I totally get it now.
I recall one of your particular, incidents of that such from when, very shortly after we first started talking.
Yeah, Pokemon Black and White had come out, and I named my Garbodor fanfiction!
Which, in hindsight, I like Garbodor. It's one of my favorite Pokemon now.
And it's kind of a powerhouse, so, fanfiction has the power to move masses.
Especially
full circle.
Especially after Gen 6 and the introduction of Fairy type made Poison actually useful.
Poison's always been useful, you just have to use it right. Anyway, sidetracking. Yeah, Harry Potter was my first real fandom, aside from, Pokemon and stuff, so, looking up, build strategies and how to use the cute ones effectively, and how do you breed an Eevee. Oh my god, why does it take so long to get a female Eevee? I want to get eggs! Yeah. That was me in the early 2000s on the internet. Such a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah. And it was intense. I didn't really understand at the time that the intensity of the fandom was kind of a new thing for fandom, partly because it was reaching such a young crowd. There had obviously been message boards and groups, and was circles or something. I don't know, subreddits for years before that, so this is by no means a new phenomenon. But it was new to me, and it was incredible, and I've lived on the internet ever since then. God help us all.
I was kind of in the same boat, but several years later. I was too old for the Harry Potter fandom, and I was too young for, or rather, the years where I would have been involved in such things, the internet didn't exist yet. Not in the way it does now. If there had been and there probably was, and I just didn't know about it because I was kind of limited in my internet access as a child. If there had been an Animorphs fandom in the early to mid 90s when I was first getting online and first learning about communities and things like that, I probably would have gotten hardcore into it.
I've actually never read Animorphs. We should probably put them on the list for something to do one day, just so I have the excuse to actually read it.
I'll just put it this way. It was, to me, what Harry Potter was to you, except a lot less embarrassing in hindsight. K.A. Applegate is still a decent person in the modern day.
Yeah, I don't know why I never read it. I've heard nothing but good things.
Also, it gets really dark. The main problem is that it's very long. The books individually...
I read Brandon Sanderson regularly.
I mean, so do I. But, I mean, the individual books themselves are not very long. They're, like... The early books are, like, a quarter the size of the early Harry Potter novels. The later books might be a third to half. But, we'll definitely have to have a slightly different structure to our reviewing of such. But we'll burn that bridge when we get to it.
Yeah, like, Harry Potter didn't quite introduce me to fantasy, but it was one of the biggest gateways to other stuff. Because, like, I'd read a little bit. Like, I think I'd read one of the Prydain books by that point, and I liked it. And there were a couple others, but then Harry Potter came out, and that was popular. I was like, I was kind of a weird kid. So being able to read the thing that everyone was talking about, so, like, reading was actually cool for a while. This is someone who got told to stop taking accelerated reader tests because I had too many points, so they weren't sure I was actually reading all of it, even though the teacher could clearly see me in the back of the classroom reading all the books. And she didn't believe I'd read Dr. Dolittle in 5th grade. Luckily, you had it on the shelf, and I was bored. So, yeah.
But yeah, to get back to the point I was making, I was involved in various communities for things, mostly RPG video games, particularly the early Pokemon games and the early Final Fantasy games. As much as I love 5 and I'm here playing it, not 5 because it hadn't come out in the US yet. Mostly 6, which is...
Hey kids, let's learn to count with Final Fantasy. 1, 4, 6.
Oh, yes. The good old bizarre SNES era numbering of the Final Fantasy games. But yeah, I got... And I was, to a lesser extent, involved in the ones around Final Fantasy VII. Less because I was interested in Final Fantasy VII myself, and more because I had a lot of friends who were. A lot of my online community at the time were big fans of 7, so I just got loosely involved in the conversations because all the people I like to talk to were. And, I basically learned more about the game from just watching conversations about it than from actually playing it. I still have yet to finish Final Fantasy VII.
That kind of sounds like my experience with Kingdom Hearts. I tried to play it. I somehow could not figure out how to build the frickin' gummy ship so I couldn't leave the first world. And then I just heard people talking about characters I never got to meet because I couldn't figure out how to get the gummy ship to leave the station. I'm kind of inept in a lot of video games, which is why Axion's playing. But yeah, so then I get to hear all about, oh yeah, no, they have to make Kingdom Hearts, like, okay, and then there's Heartless and Nobodies, and then there's Sophie.
Sophie has opinions about Kingdom Hearts. Sophie got Norded. Okay, I won't make that joke again, unless we actually play Kingdom Hearts.
By we mean you. But yeah, like, it was really different being able to actually discuss something with people as it came out, like, much like we do with TV shows, which is honestly why I really like that Disney Plus with the MCU stuff had been releasing them like one episode at a time, because there was time to talk and speculate and build community around it, rather than just let's binge it all at once. So hopefully you have 6 hours to set aside, or so you don't get spoiled on Twitter. It's just, there's something about a shared hobby that you can discuss with people. It makes you feel less alone, which is honestly what a lot of us want when it comes to our escapist fiction. We like video games, but we like talking about what we like about the video games with other people who know what we're talking about. We love to read, but it means more if you can discuss what you read.
Yep. And that was kind of the situation I was in the first actual fandom I got into, which we've discussed before. In my case, was Homestuck.
Oh god.
Like I said, I had a lot of friends who were interested in various games and stuff, but I did not get involved in a fandom until Homestuck. And
you picked the one fandom that made all of us Harry Potter kid weirdos look sane.
Exactly.
In retrospect. It's like, I remember, like, hey, look, you're running around pretending you're flying on broomsticks, you weirdo, and then we have the trolls at all of the anime conventions.
Oh my word, it got insane. And in retrospect, it was a time. But I'm not going to lie and say that it didn't happen. That was a good 3 or 4 years of my life that got consumed by this webcomic.
Oh, I mean, I'm not much better. I still have my Time hoodie that I specifically bought for a community joke.
I still want to get one of those hoodies, but I don't think they sell them anymore. I'd have to go look.
Is that how that's going?
I feel so sorry for her, and for the handful of other people who tried to do retrospectives and got backlash by what's left of the community. Anyway, point being, that was the first time that I really experienced the levels of insanity that fandom communities can become. And it just... It's something... It's not just the fans are super interested in these things. That's just being a fan of something. You don't reach the point of fandom until you have large numbers and extreme devotion.
Let's just say that Homestuck made me understand the term cult classic for the first time in my life. Because, like, let's be honest. We have the Firefly fandom. They don't go as ham as the Harry Potter fandom. So let's see, that's like your 100-meter dash. Harry Potter would be like the running the mile. Homestuck, you're at the Boston Marathon. That's the level of intensity of fandom we're looking at here.
Yeah. So, to bring this all back to Harry Potter, being someone who was not super involved with the Potter fandom, and only really knew of the books in passing comparatively, a lot of my experience with the community was through when the fandom did something weird or outlandish or extreme, and news of it got outside that bubble. Which would basically be the equivalent of going to a con and seeing all these crazy Homestuck people doing wonky stuff with their bizarre costumes, and just going absolutely nuts on things, and you have no idea why. So, was this the kind of thing happening when you were part of the fandom, or did that not come in until you'd been there for a while?
Not that I remember, but also remember I was still in like middle and high school for most of the series. So I didn't get to actually go to one of the midnight book releases until Deathly Hallows came out, because I was in high school, could drive myself, I didn't have to bug my parents to, can you come pick me up from Borders at 1 in the morning? Oh god, that's an old sentence. So yeah, I went to that with my at the time best friend, and we had a lot of fun. And it was honestly just like, there were parents there with their little kids because they'd been raising them on the Harry Potter movies and stuff. Like Harry Potter was at the time just something the whole family could enjoy, and it was really neat. Like you weren't weird for reading a kid's book; you were just part of the zeitgeist. And no fandom that I remember has actually managed to capture that quite as well. Like, they tried really hard to push that with Twilight to be the next Harry Potter, and it just did not work, because the books are so different. I mean, Twilight's a romance, and Harry Potter's structured more like mystery, not to mention other things, but, you know, we'll probably do that at some point eventually, and we'll talk about it then. And let's just say that Meyer's looking a little bit sane and Rowling these days. But yeah, so no, I don't remember people going completely bananas. Like, we liked the books, we'd dress up, we'd know what house we were in, Ravenclaw for life, sometimes Slytherin, but beyond that, not a whole lot. Like, it was never to the insanity that Homestuck was. It was a big part of things, and honestly, it's still useful to this day, because even with people distancing themselves from the series, as I've mentioned, I can't get rid of all of the positive memories I have from enjoying the books. I just can't enjoy them that way anymore. Right. And it's still a good conversation starter, because enough people are familiar with the series in one media or another that if you have nothing else to talk about, you can talk about the stories. I don't know. It sometimes comes up. The movies rerun constantly because they know people will watch them and get them ratings up.
So, speaking as someone from the outside, that was really all I knew about the Harry Potter fandom. Was they got together in insane numbers, they showed up at book releases and movie premieres in full costume,
I do feel the need to interject here.
Go ahead.
You're a Star Wars fan, and you cannot tell me they don't show up to movie premieres
no,
in
they
full
absolutely do. They
See,
absolutely do. Yeah.
It's not, yeah. Harry Potter, I think, just hit that differently, because for most of my childhood, most Star Wars fans were kind of quieter because we had the prequels, so they would be more niche from just the books, which are not as mainstream as the Harry Potter books. So Harry Potter was not just, oh, the fandom is just gone crazy. The fandom is normal people, quote unquote, which is a phrase I hate, but that's kind of how it came across.
But that's kind of what it was. Star Wars fans, when I was a kid and into my young adulthood, were older nerds and their nerdy kids and grandkids. It was not really a thing that was super socially everywhere until, I'd say, about episode 2 came out. That, I think, was the tipping point where there had been enough of the,
Okay, I'm gonna be blunt here. Episode 2 is when they replaced whiny kid Anakin with somewhat hot, moody Anakin.
Yes, that definitely helped. But it was also the point where enough of the active viewer base was just average people who weren't explicitly there because they were into nerdy things. They were just people going to the movies. And that was unusual for the fandom. And then you take that and you multiply it by a lot, and that gets you the level that the Harry Potter fandom was on. Because for all of the world-shaking juggernaut that is Star Wars, especially Star Wars in the time of the prequels coming out, but Harry Potter was so much more. And that was... It was a completely different reality compared to what a lot of nerdy communities had experienced in the past. It was not common until around that time for nerd culture to overlap so heavily with popular culture. And Star Wars prequels and Harry Potter, I think, were two of the biggest factors in that changing. Star Wars and Harry Potter taking these niche subjects that were considered super popular and super influential despite being fantasy, sci-fi, whatever you call Star Wars, and a children's series of novels about wizards. And having those things have such cultural overlap with the popular, with just general culture, completely changed the way previously nerdy media was viewed by so much of society. It took this subject that was kind of always niche and always off on its own, and that only these small communities were usually involved in, and made it the biggest money makers of their era. And I think that paved the way for things like the Marvel movies to become the absolute world-shaking, money-making juggernauts that they are.
Oh, absolutely. Because, yeah, you do need, like, your gateways. Like, Lord of the Rings was also really big on that,
Yeah,
I think.
It would definitely be the third one.
Though I'm also thinking, do you remember Foxtrot, the newspaper comic?
Yeah.
I distinctly remember back when Borders were still a thing, walking into the comics section and seeing the Foxtrot collection titled Orlando Bloom Ruined Everything, where you have, I don't remember what his name is, and his friend in like their Hobbit costumes in the front row, and all these swooning teenage girls in the other seats in the theater.
Jason was the main character.
Thank you, yes. Yeah, just, you gotta find multi-demographic appeal if you want to be as big as these series got, and again, it was lightning in a bottle, and in hindsight, it just happened to hit right at the right time because, well, I don't think the story holds up. There are aspects of it that I like, but there is so much of it that was clumsily handled, and so much that just outright...
Wait, are we talking about Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings?
Harry Potter, sorry.
Okay. Because we left off on Lord of the Rings, and I'm like, wait, what?
Nope, sorry. No, we're on Harry Potter. We'll probably eventually talk about Lord of the Rings at some point under duress.
Yeah. That's going to be interesting to figure out. Anyway, so to kind of bring this back around, again speaking as an outsider, the other thing that came around that got my attention to the series beyond the movies and the sheer breadth of the fandom's involvement was the fanfiction. And particularly one fanfiction. And I think you know which one I
mean. My name is Enemy Darkness Dementia Ravenway.
Yes. One of my first exposures to Harry Potter was My Immortal. In fact, I remember hearing about My Immortal before ever seeing the first Harry Potter movie. I didn't read it. I did not spend the time to figure out what this thing was. But I was on the internet in the early to mid 2000s when this was all happening.
Hey, if you need it, here's your English teacher endorsement. It's more readable than Moby Dick.
Oof. I never finished Moby Dick, so...
I did, and I want that time back that I spent.
My Immortal has been discussed to death. What I actually want to discuss in regards to this is the idea of fanfiction as an expression of fandom. You don't write a fanfic about something that you just like. Especially not one that went on for 50 some odd chapters, completely messed around with characters and concepts and redesigned the setting and all of that sort of thing that happened with My Immortal. You can argue for days if My Immortal was a deliberate troll, the result of a young child/teenager first dipping their attentions into making fanfiction content, the result of an adult or older teenager or someone trying to do something ironic, a deliberate mockery of the fandom. You can go on for ages with that and honestly probably never get an actual answer. But it says something that this was so well known across the internet and that the person who wrote it, whoever they were, put so much time and effort into it. It goes on for something like 60 chapters. And you don't put that kind of effort into something that you just like.
Well,
you either have to incredibly loathe something or incredibly love something to put that much effort into it.
Counterpoint. Spite.
I said loathe.
There's a difference. And I am going to bring up Twilight here. I have, to this day, meh feelings on the series. I don't actually hate it, but I don't really care about it. But I read the whole series because my friend told me I wasn't allowed to call it silly until I had. So, despite having no strong feelings about it, I put in that much effort out of spite.
To read it?
Yep.
You did not put in that much effort to write your own fanfiction about it. That's what I was talking about.
Okay, fair. That's just because I don't really write fanfiction. I'd rather just work with my own stuff, but yeah.
But that's my point. You don't take the effort to go into someone else's world and make something like My Immortal unless you either hate the core setting or absolutely adore it.
Or you just feel uncomfortable playing in somebody else's setting for I find it disrespectful in a lot of regards that I I might get part of the world wrong, and that could, ruin things. So, I don't know. That's just my hang up on it. I know not everybody has that.
But yeah, my point is kind of being that the person who wrote My Immortal clearly has strong feelings about the world of Harry Potter, and took the time and effort to go into that world and craft something out of it. We can argue for eons if that something was good or bad. To me, it doesn't really matter. The point is that this is a setting, a world, a story that has elicited these strong reactions from people and had such a monumental effect on the way these people look and interact with and consume these products, that they feel driven to put in the time and effort to make something of their own out of that world. We may not like what they make. We may think it's bad or silly or dumb or whatever, but this is something that meant something to someone, and they took that meaning, that emotion, and made something out of it. And that's... There's a lot to say about a story that's capable of putting that much influence into a person that their only reasonable response to it is to create something with that much effort and that much time invested to show, to get out that emotion, to show what this meant to them, to put substance to those feelings. And for all the flaws in Harry Potter and all the problems with Rowling and all of the problems with the world, it still affected people so strongly. And I don't think there's very many things in the world that can compete with that kind of reaction.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Anyway, I've kind of talked myself hoarse there.
Yeah.
And I think we've kind of run the last of this subject down.
Yep.
I think that wraps it up for Half-Blood Prince.
Yep, which means when we see you next, we will be coming back with a different book. Until then.
See y'all.